evening to everyone. My name is Wendy. I'm an intellectual property lawyer, and I've spent a large part of my career with one of Southeast Asia's largest firm. So, what I'm about to speak of tonight really comes from a viewpoint of innovation and what I see as some of the fundamental issues with our current economy. So essentially, we're at this juncture where the government is telling us that they have all the economic roadmaps and they know exactly where this economic GPS is going to lead our fellow Singaporeans. But this is really a distraction from the real issue. Let me explain. I think there are four key points. One, if you take the analogy of a car, then what we have is that really it's an economic car engine that is faulty, and there's really no power to push it along other than our fellow Singaporeans who are working longer and longer hours. And it's not just sufficient that you put in those long hours. At the earliest opportunity that there are cheaper foreign talents who are available, our fellow Singaporeans are displaced. Third, the issue is that when there are any faults happening with this part of this entire economic structure of the vehicle, what the government typically would say is that they do not know of anyone who has asked us to apologize. So they make no apologies for the faults that are occurring on a regular basis, and the problems just get pushed further and further downstream. Four, the problem is that for the few times there are any profitable innovation to the engine, the driver uses its resources to either replicate or get a cheaper third party to copy some of these designs. And actually, this leaves very little incentive for small Singaporean businesses to continuously innovate. So these are some of our fundamental issues. And what we end up with is really a flashy, beautiful car with a so-called advanced economic GPS, but the car itself is structurally and economically and fundamentally crumbling. So what are some of the solutions that PSP has actually thought along where we could bring about true reform? And again, I think there are five key points for me to elaborate, both from a party's perspective as well as my own reflection, having seen what I've seen on the ground. First, I think we need an inherent innovation from within, starting from this current election. We need all our professionals, teachers, artists, as Harish has mentioned. We have a huge diversity of experience, not just based on our CVs, but also based on our diversity in thought. We are not bound by party whips, but as Michael has earlier introduced, we are people who truly believe that we should be pushing thought and progress based on our individual's conscience. So it is not a structural formulation that we're going with us joining PSP, but they're all presenting ourselves as individuals with our ideas, aligning ourselves with the party, and putting ourselves forward that if you're future MPs, that we really just want to genuinely bring the best ideas to our fellow Singaporeans without bounds and without limits, and most importantly, be guided by our own conscience and our sense of what is compassion. Along with that, I truly believe as well that our civil service needs to be reformed. And by that, I really mean that we need to start thinking of assessment based on skill sets and not paper qualifications. Paper qualifications are important and they can be the starting point, but it cannot be the ending point. And when we have that true innovation of our civil service, what that brings about is real productivity from even our civil service brothers and sisters who can then be motivated to be outwardly innovative. The second large point I would like to deal with is really on social security, and that is based on the premise that no Singaporean should be left behind. The four recent budgets have provided some relief, but because of the complicated criteria, this relief do not reach our most needy Singaporeans in a most timely manner. Why can't we start looking at simpler solutions at a long-term basis on helping our fellow Singaporeans? And I think some of the more immediate and simpler solutions can possibly be taken from simply giving Singaporeans access to their CPF in times of need, such as a recession, or in the current times of the pandemic. After all, CPF monies belong to our fellow Singaporeans, and there is no reason why they should not be drawing on their own savings. More importantly, this will also give us immediate and timely relief without heavily drawing down on our national reserves. A resident I've spoken with has also suggested ideas such as allowing elderly Singaporeans enjoying interest accumulated from their CPF. And I think this is an idea that merits further consideration. A related point I've raised in an interview, a discussion I had earlier today, is really why are we looking to key party leaders or key 4G leaders for any form of ideas or solution when we can really be sitting with our fellow Singaporeans and looking for solutions from their perspective. And I think what we need to really bring about is the true ground out leadership to really bring about better solutions for Singaporeans. Related to what I mentioned about a CPF withdrawal, I think at the baseline, we should be talking about excess of CPF to allow for minimal living wage. But at this current juncture, there is very little data to support what is a viable living minimum wage for of our fellow Singaporeans. And I do hope that we can push for an independent study as to what this criteria entails. In most surveys that has been commissioned as of today, it looks about basic survival. But as we all know, for meaningful survival, as Harish has also pointed out, it goes beyond just having rice, water, and a shelter over our head. It is about our investment in arts. It's about our engagement with our children's education. It is about having a meaningful existence that is framed on the prospects of real happiness. And with that as criteria, and with that as fellow potential MPs that's coming forward, we are looking at multiple trunks to this conversation instead of having one party dominating that dialogue. And I think it's when you have that multiple prongs looking at a current situation that you can bring about more meaningful discussions and solutions. And at the end of the day, with this minimal living wage, what I truly also believe that should form the base criteria for our low wage workers. And that is when we can really start talking about helping our fellow Singaporeans who are earning the lowest strata of income, that they themselves become elevated, that they themselves find meaning, and they themselves go beyond mere survival. The third point I would wish to bring up is also the idea of job creation for Singaporeans, of which we've been hearing a lot about. And specifically, I would like to say this in relation to our young graduates and also our PMAPs. One of the key reasons I believe why our young graduates are finding it hard to gain employment in times of crisis is that most employers see them as liability, even if their training and salary to some extent could be subsidized. What we need fundamentally is really a mindset shift. And I offer a proposal, which is to start looking as our young graduates as digital millennials who bring about a new skill set in terms of digital marketing, in terms of network marketing. And this is really looking at it from the perspective of growing a business pie from the very first time they are entrants to your businesses. What can be done along these lines is that businesses can start rewarding your young graduates also on a profit sharing, quite apart from a fixed salary. And this profit sharing element can help bridge the slightly lower wages they may be asked to take on for the temporary time that we are having this recession period. So it's a win-win situation whereby the companies themselves may be able to afford promising opportunities at slightly lower wages, thus resulting in cost savings for the businesses. But at the same time, there's potential for the graduates to upside if they can leverage on their marketing skills to bring about bigger business opportunities for their employers. So we should be looking at more strategic directions instead of looking at a one-sided dialogue where we're just asking the graduates basically to, for want of a better word, to suck it up, live with lower wages, and hope that the economy recovers sufficiently for them to move on. And with this, I would also suggest that the state also look at making marketing and digital marketing compulsory elements of studies for courses before our IT, our polytechnic, and our university students graduate. And therefore, they can be part of their curricula and part of their consciousness and awareness as they seek their employment. And with the increase of lecturing positions, this can create opportunities for PMAPs who may be looking for transitional roles. And PMAPs themselves may have had strengths marketing in different industries that they can offer real life training opportunities to these students. So this is not just a win-win, but I think it could be a win-win-win solution. Turning specifically to PMAPs, I would say that in the time to come, a lot of the focus has really been on training or reducing foreign intake. But at the end of the day, what we do need to realize that the fourth industrial revolution is not just about foreign talents that are coming on board in a physical basis, but also competition that's being offered based on online availability of resources and labor from overseas. So how do we need to address that beyond just throwing lots of money for reliefs and retraining of our PMAPs? And I think this idea needs to come back to what we make of the fourth industrial revolution. Fundamentally, again, I believe it should be based on the premise of marrying technology of what are needs that are essential to human. And I think the COVID has taught us that what are our essential services? So what we should be looking at really is marrying of technology, AI, and robotics with your food, with your energy, with your water resources, with your education and your healthcare. And then direct all your training focus to having your PMAPs become leaders when that shift is made available or when that shift is already now and here, that they should be making meaningful transitions and not just spend all these reliefs and training opportunities in untargeted, unfocused ways of just clearing KPIs for civil service to say that they have created those number of training opportunities. And fourthly, I believe we should be looking at sustainable growth. There's been recent controversy as to whether or not we are projecting for a 10 million population growth. But quite a number, apart from the numbers, what I do believe is that we should be looking at an ASEAN-oriented growth. ASEAN is projected to be the fourth largest economy by 2030, and they are our immediate neighbors. With our Malay community, I've also previously spoken that we should be moving away from a relief model and looking at an aspirational model for our fellow Malay brothers and sisters so that we can look at ASEAN, we can look at Malaysia, we can look at Indonesia, and see what are the business opportunities that can be bridged because there is a huge common similarity in both language, heritage, and culture that our Malay community can access in a way that the rest of us cannot. So why are we not tapping on this huge potential that we already have? And the next thing, when we talk about our new citizens who have already become part of us as fellow Singaporeans, we should be moving to a conversation where we're growing together. They come from many different countries, and moving even from ASEAN and beyond, they again can be seen as our economic ambassadors, likewise to bridge opportunities for fellow Singaporeans, looking at enlarging the economic pie, reaching countries to China, Russia, India, Central Asia, and we should be starting conversations in ways that are collaborative. Finally, and my last point is that we should be looking forward on an economy based on wellness renaissance. And by that, I'm looking at affordable, preventive, and holistic healthcare for our elderlies. I'm talking about looking at Singapore as a country that deals with true happiness, and we should be aiming for zero suicide. And by that, I'm also talking about a sustainable economy where we could be exploring opportunities of building Singapore as a wellness hub in Asia, inviting tourists who come in for wellness treatment, and using that to cross-subsidize of healthcare and facilities without the burden of GST increases. So these are some of just some of the ideas that we have. And we do hope that you can give us that opportunity to present ourselves and to speak to you as fellow residents of Tanjong Pagar to see how we can make Singaporean a beautiful, happier, and better home for all of us. Thank you.